The security guard's hand was already on Marcus Webb's shoulder when he said it. Quietly, without looking up. "I'm not leaving without my daughter." Catherine Vance laughed from across the polished marble lobby of Vance Pharmaceuticals, a sharp, surprised sound that bounced off 40 floors of glass. She turned to her assistant, Diane Hollister, loud enough for the entire reception area to hear. "Did the maintenance guy just refuse a direct order from the CEO? In my building?" Diane smirked. 3 executives waiting near the elevator turned to look. A young woman at the front desk pretended to type. The security guard's grip tightened. Marcus didn't move. His daughter Ivy, 7 years old, stood behind his leg in a yellow rain jacket 2 sizes too big, clutching the corner of his work shirt with both hands. She'd been crying. There was still a wet streak down one cheek. Catherine took 3 steps closer, heels clicking against the marble like small gunshots. "Sir, this is a private corporate event. You don't belong here. You and your child need to leave." Now, what Catherine didn't know, what none of the people watching from the executive floor knew, was that the man in the navy work shirt holding his daughter's hand had personally approved the lease on the building they were standing in. What Diane didn't know was that by Friday morning, her name would be removed from the company directory entirely. And what nobody in that lobby could have guessed was that the small folded ID badge in Marcus Webb's back pocket was about to make a 47-year-old CEO go completely, terrifyingly still. But for now, Marcus just held his daughter's hand a little tighter and waited. 3 hours earlier, Marcus had been kneeling on his kitchen floor trying to find a matching sock. The apartment was small. 2 bedrooms over a dry cleaner on Bristol Avenue, with a radiator that clanked every 12 minutes and a fridge that hummed in a key just slightly off from middle C. Marcus had memorized both sounds. He'd been living there for 14 months. It was the first place that had felt like home since Sarah died. "Daddy." "I can't find Mr. Buttons." Ivy stood in the doorway of her bedroom in mismatched pajamas, hair sticking up in 7 different directions. Mr. Buttons was a stuffed elephant with one ear partially chewed off, courtesy of a neighbor's puppy during a brief experiment in dog-sitting that had ended badly for everyone, especially Mr. Buttons. "Did you check under the bed?" "Yes." "In the laundry basket?" She paused. "Maybe go check the laundry basket, bug." She disappeared. Marcus poured coffee into a chipped mug that said "World's Okayest Dad," a gift from Ivy's kindergarten teacher, which Marcus suspected was a joke he wasn't entirely in on. Then he checked the calendar pinned to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a strawberry. Tuesday. Take your kid to work day at the office. Except Ivy's school had also scheduled their parent-teacher conference for the same morning. Except Sarah's sister, who normally watched Ivy in emergencies, was in Phoenix. Except the babysitter had called at 6 a.m. to say she had strep throat. Except Marcus had a quarterly meeting at 9 that he absolutely could not miss, which is how he ended up doing what every single parent in America has done at least once, showing up to work with his kid and a quiet prayer that nobody would care. He'd considered, briefly, calling in, telling Elena he'd take the meeting by phone. But Sarah had hated that. "You can't half show up for people, Marcus," she used to say, usually while folding laundry, usually while half watching something terrible on TV. They feel it. Even when they don't know they feel it. It had been one of the things that drove her crazy about him, back before everything. He'd been good at being half present. Phone in one hand, daughter in the other, mind already 3 meetings ahead. She died before he got around to fixing it, which meant, and he knew this was the kind of thing therapists got paid to point out, he was probably going to spend the rest of his life fixing it anyway. For her. For Ivy. For himself. He didn't dress up. He never dressed up on Tuesdays. Tuesdays he visited the maintenance floor, talked to the building staff, walked the property himself. It was something he'd started after Sarah died, a way of staying connected to people who actually did work that left visible results at the end of the day. He wore a navy work shirt with no name tag, jeans, scuffed brown boots. He'd learned, over the past few years, that wearing the uniform got him better information than wearing the suit ever had. People talked to maintenance guys. They didn't talk to CEOs. Ivy returned holding Mr. Buttons triumphantly. He was inside the basket, like under the towels. Mr. Buttons gets around. Daddy, do I have to come to your work? Just for the morning, Bug. I'll drop you at school for the afternoon. Is there going to be cookies? There are always cookies. Okay, I'll bring Mr. Buttons. He's never been to a office. Office. Marcus knelt down and zipped her yellow rain jacket up to her chin. It had been Sarah's, actually Sarah's, from before she got sick, when she used to walk Ivy to the park on rainy mornings. Ivy had insisted on inheriting it even though it swallowed her whole. Marcus had let her. Some things you didn't argue about. They were almost out the door when Ivy stopped. Looked up. Daddy, are you sad today? He paused with his hand on the doorknob. No, Bug, why? You did the face. What face? The one where you're trying not to do the face. He laughed, even though it caught in his throat a little. I'm okay. I promise. Let's go find some cookies. The lobby of Vance Pharmaceuticals was a temple of money. 40 floors of curved glass, a fountain in the center that made the air smell faintly of chlorine and ambition, and a reception desk longer than most people's apartments. Marcus and Ivy walked in through the side entrance at 8:47 a.m., which was the entrance the maintenance staff used. The security guard at the door, a man named Hector who had 3 grandchildren and a fishing boat in Maine, waved them through without looking up. Morning, Mr. W. Morning, Hector. How's the boat? Still floating. Mostly good news. Ivy looked up at the ceiling. Daddy, is this where you work? Sometimes it's fancy. Yeah, Bug. It's pretty fancy. They were halfway across the lobby when Catherine Vance walked out of the executive elevator. Now here's something worth knowing about Catherine. She'd been CEO of Vance Pharmaceuticals for 11 months. She was 47 years old, sharp-featured, with hair the exact shade of obsidian that only existed in salons that didn't have prices on the menu. She was, to be fair to her, even now, extremely intelligent. She had a PhD from Wharton, a record of cutting bloated middle management with surgical precision, and a reputation in the industry as someone who optimized everything she touched. She had also been hired by the board 9 months ago, which meant she had been hired by the people Marcus Webb owned shares with, which meant, and this was the part Catherine didn't know, she worked for him. She didn't know, because Marcus had specifically asked the board not to tell her. He'd asked the same of every new executive since Sarah died. He liked to see how they treated people when they thought nobody important was watching. It had not always worked out cleanly. Some executives had failed the test in interesting ways, being rude to baristas, snapping at receptionists, sending interns on coffee runs in the rain, and Marcus had quietly let their contracts expire. Others had passed. One had even, years ago, given up her seat in a packed elevator for him without ever knowing who he was. She now ran an entire division. Marcus didn't think of it as a test, exactly. He thought of it as paying attention. Sarah had taught him, in the years they had together, that the only character that mattered was the kind a person showed when there was no benefit to showing it. The rest was performance. He hadn't expected the test, on this particular Tuesday, to involve his own daughter. Catherine spotted him from 20 feet away. Specifically, she spotted Ivy. "Excuse me." Her voice carried. "Excuse me, sir." Marcus stopped. Turned, Catherine walked toward them with the brisk, efficient strides of someone who had never once in her life had to wait for permission. "Who let you bring a child in here?" "This is a corporate office, not a daycare. We have a major investor meeting in this building at 10. Marcus glanced down at Ivy, who had immediately tucked herself behind his leg. "It's Take Your Kid to Work Day. Building-wide. Was announced last month. Take Your Kid to Work Day is for executives. It's a networking event. Not," she waved a hand at his work shirt, his boots, the chipped name on his keychain. There was a silence. Hector, at the side door, looked up sharply. Marcus said, "It's for everyone in the building, ma'am. That's been the policy for 9 years. Well, the policy has changed." Catherine smiled. It was the smile of someone announcing a decision that had not, in fact, just been made on the spot. "I'm changing it. Effective immediately." What Catherine didn't know was that she didn't have the authority to change that policy unilaterally. What she also didn't know was that the policy had been written, originally, by Marcus's late wife when she'd run the HR department in this very building 8 years ago. Sarah had insisted on it. "Every kid, every floor," she'd said. Or, "We're just another building." It had been the first thing Marcus had asked the board to preserve when she got sick. He just nodded, slowly. "Okay? Okay? I hear you." Catherine's eyebrows lifted. She was used to people apologizing instantly. The lack of one threw her, just briefly. Then she recovered. "So you'll leave?" "No, ma'am." She blinked. He bent down and picked up Ivy, settling her on his hip. "Mister." Buttons dangled from one small fist. "I'm here for the day with my daughter. I'll keep her on the maintenance floor. She won't bother your investors. But I'm not leaving." "Excuse me?" "I said I'm not leaving." Diane Hollister, Catherine's assistant, had come up behind her at some point. A thin woman in a charcoal pantsuit, tablet in hand, the kind of professional smile that looked like it had been installed rather than learned. She leaned in. "Catherine, should I call security?" "Yes, please do." Hector approached from the side door. He'd been there 19 years. He had watched Marcus walk through that lobby every Tuesday for the past 4. He had also watched, 3 winters ago, when Marcus had stood at this same security desk at 2 in the morning, the night after Sarah's funeral, trying to remember the code to his own elevator because he'd forgotten his badge. Hector did not look at Marcus. He looked at Catherine. "Ma'am, is there a problem? This man refuses to leave. He brought a child into the lobby. Remove him." "Ma'am." "Now, please." Hector hesitated. It was the smallest hesitation, but Catherine caught it. Her eyes narrowed. "Is there something I should know, officer?" Hector looked at Marcus. Marcus shook his head slightly, just a small motion. "Not yet." "No, ma'am." "Sir, can you come with me?" Marcus set Ivy down, kept her hand in his. "We're going with him, Bug. It's okay. Hector's gonna take us to the back. Are we in trouble?" "No, Bug, we're definitely not in trouble." Hector placed a hand gently on Marcus's shoulder. He didn't grip. He just rested it there. It was the kind of touch you give a friend at a funeral. And that's when Marcus said it. Quietly, without looking up. "I'm not leaving without my daughter." Catherine laughed. By the time her laughter had echoed off the marble for the second time, 3 of the executives by the elevator had stopped pretending not to watch. A young intern with a coffee tray had frozen completely. The receptionist had put down her phone. Marcus stood there with his daughter's hand in his. He had not raised his voice. He had not moved. He had simply made a statement of fact, the way a man states which way is north. Catherine took 2 steps closer. Did you just refuse to comply with both me and security? No, ma'am. I'm complying with Hector. He's asked me to walk to the back office. I'm walking. With my daughter. Without her, sir, the child stays in the lobby. Diane will watch her. Then you'll be escorted off the property. Diane stepped forward, hand outstretched, like she was approaching a small animal. Sweetie, come with me, just for a minute. Ivy pressed herself against Marcus's leg. She didn't cry. She just shook her head, once, slowly, and her small fist tightened around Mr. Button's. Marcus knelt down to her level. Hey, Bug, look at me. She did. You remember what I told you about Brave? She nodded. What did I say? Brave isn't not scared. Brave is scared and you still hold somebody's hand. That's right. Whose hand am I holding? Mine. Then how scared can I be? She almost smiled. He stood back up, looked at Catherine. My daughter stays with me. That's not a request. Diane, still extending her hand, glanced uncertainly at Catherine. Catherine's jaw tightened. She was a woman accustomed to outcomes matching her instructions, and this one wasn't tracking. She turned to Hector. Officer, detain him. Take the child to security pending CP's notification if necessary. The intern with the coffee tray actually gasped. Hector's face, Marcus would remember this later, did something complicated. A flicker of disbelief, then anger, then very deliberately, nothing at all. He turned to Marcus. Sir, I'm going to need to see your identification. Marcus reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet. From the wallet, he took out a small folded ID badge, the kind issued to executives at Vance Pharmaceuticals, with a magnetic strip on the back. He handed it to Hector. He had kept it folded for years. Not hidden, exactly, just folded. Sarah used to tease him about it. You're the only chairman in America who walks around with his badge in his back pocket like a movie ticket stub. And he'd said, every time, I just don't want to be that guy. And she'd said, every time, Marcus, sweetheart, you're already that guy. The badge isn't what makes you that guy. The badge is just so other people know. He hadn't unfolded it in a long time. Hector did not open it. He already knew what it said. But he opened it anyway. For the room, so nobody could later claim he hadn't checked. He read it, looked up at Catherine, and said, in a voice that was somehow both apologetic and not apologetic at all, Ma'am, you might want to look at this. Catherine took the badge, glanced down. Then everything in her face stopped at once. Her mouth did not open, her eyes did not widen, she did not gasp. It was, instead, the kind of stillness that overtakes a person when their entire understanding of the situation is reorganizing itself in real time, like furniture being silently rearranged in a dark room. The badge said, Marcus Webb, founder and chairman, Vance Pharmaceuticals Holdings, LLC. Below it, a smaller line, board authorization, universal access, all floors. She read it 3 times. Slowly, then she looked up. Marcus said, very quietly, Hi, Catherine. We haven't formally met. The lobby was completely silent. The fountain kept running. Somewhere on the executive floor, a phone rang and went unanswered. Diane's tablet slipped slightly in her hands. The intern with the coffee tray was no longer pretending not to watch. She was openly staring, lips parted. Behind Catherine, the elevator chimed. The doors opened. Out stepped Elena Rios, the chief operating officer, holding a folder. She took 2 steps into the lobby, registered the scene, registered Marcus, registered Marcus's face, and immediately closed the folder. Marcus, I didn't know you were here today. Take your kid to work day, Elena. Right, of course. Elena's eyes flicked to Catherine, to Diane, to Hector still holding the badge, to Ivy in her yellow jacket. The pieces were assembling themselves very fast behind Elena's eyes. Catherine, could I see you in my office? Catherine did not respond. She was still looking at the badge. Catherine, yes, now, please. But Catherine, to her credit, or perhaps just because some part of her brain still believed this could be salvaged, turned back to Marcus first. Mr. Webb, I had no idea. If I had known, I know, Marcus said. It was a misunderstanding, I know. If you'll just give me a moment to explain. You don't need to explain. You already did. He bent down, picked up Ivy again, settled her on his hip. You said the policy was for executives, not this. You looked at my daughter and you decided she didn't belong. That's not a misunderstanding. That's just who you are when you think nobody's watching. Catherine's face did something then. A small crumple, very quickly suppressed. Marcus looked at Hector, handed him a different look entirely, warm, tired, grateful. Hector, could you walk my daughter up to the maintenance floor? Mrs. Acosta said she'd have cookies. Yes, sir, cookies, Ivy said. Cookies, Bug. Hector held out his hand. Ivy looked up at Marcus. Marcus nodded. She took Hector's hand and trotted off across the marble, Mr. Buttons swinging. Marcus watched her go. Then he turned back to Catherine and Elena. Let's all go up to your office, Elena. I think we have a few things to discuss. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday, but they didn't wait that long. By Thursday afternoon, Catherine Vance had been called into a closed session with the executive committee and 3 members of the board, including Marcus. She walked in with prepared remarks. She walked out without a job. The official statement, released Friday morning, was a single careful sentence. Catherine Vance has stepped down as CEO effective immediately to pursue other opportunities. The unofficial version, which circulated through industry Slack channels by lunchtime, was longer and considerably less polite. It included a phrase that would follow her for the next 4 years of her career, unable to read the room. The board's reasoning, as recorded in the minutes, did not mention Ivy. It didn't have to. It cited a pattern, 11 months of unilateral policy changes, 6 senior departures in her division, a quarterly culture survey that had cratered. The lobby incident was simply, in the chair's careful phrasing, the data point that resolved the picture. 2 of the board members who voted to remove her had been opposed to her hiring in the first place. They were not, on the morning of the vote, gracious about it. She had tried, between Thursday's meeting and Friday's announcement, to write Marcus a letter. She wrote 3 drafts. The first apologized for not recognizing him. The second apologized for the policy change. The third, the one she almost sent, apologized for trying to separate a 7-year-old from her father in a marble lobby in front of 19 witnesses, and admitted she didn't have a good explanation for why she'd done it. She didn't send any of them. Some apologies, Catherine had finally understood, were not actually for the person you were writing to. They were for yourself. And Marcus Webb didn't need her to feel better. Diane Hollister, the assistant who had reached for Ivy's hand, found out on Friday morning that her position had been restructured. She was offered a transfer to a regional satellite office in another state. She did not take it. Within a month, the gossip in her professional circle had calcified into a single, unshakable sentence. She's the one who tried to grab the kid, and her career, while not destroyed, would never again move at the speed she'd planned. Some things, once you do them in front of people, don't get to be misunderstandings. The policy that had triggered the entire incident, take your kid to work day, building wide, every floor, was not only preserved, but expanded. Marcus had Alina write up the formal protection memo on Monday morning. It went out to every manager in every division. At the bottom, in italics, in a font slightly smaller than the rest, was a single line that several employees would later screenshot and share. Originally drafted by Sarah Webb, 2017, permanent. Hector got a quiet bonus, a handwritten thank you note, and a Friday off to take his grandchildren fishing. Marcus heard about Catherine's resignation while making toast on Saturday morning. Alina called. He listened. He nodded once at the kitchen counter, even though nobody could see him. Okay, he said. Thanks, Elena, you don't sound happy. I'm not happy. I'm not sad. It's just what happens when people decide who gets to belong. He hung up. Ivy was at the kitchen table. Drawing, she looked up. Who was that? Just work. Are you sad? No, Bug, you did the face. Did I? A little. He came over, sat down across from her, looked at her drawing 3 stick figures and a stuffed elephant standing in front of a building with too many windows. What's this? That's us, at your office, after the cookies. Who's the elephant? Mr. Buttons? He came too. Of course he did. Outside. It was raining again. The yellow jacket hung on a hook by the door. Marcus reached across the table and took his daughter's small, sticky hand in his. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. After a while, she went back to drawing, and he poured another cup of coffee, and somewhere in the building, the radiator clanked exactly 12 minutes after the last time, the way it always did. It wasn't a fancy life. It wasn't even a particularly easy one. But it was, in the way that mattered, theirs. And that, Marcus had learned, the hard way after Sarah, was the only kind of life worth defending. Even in a marble lobby. Even out loud. Even when somebody important was watching.